So after the Robinson-Huron and Superior treaties took place, of course the government just kept rolling on down the line. And they just named them Treaty 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on. And so the numbered treaties fell shortly after the Great Lakes treaties. And by then, they had everything down packed.
When the treaties were signed, the clan mothers were satisfied with the three our main articles of treaty: health, education, and shelter. They were okay with the idea that the Queen was going to pay for those things. And what happened there was, when they were satisfied with the content of the treaty, they instructed the leaders to sign off on that document.
So what people, I think, need to know is that the numbered treaties are very different than the Superior Robinson treaties. And the Superior Huron treaties, there's absolutely no talk about healthcare, there's no talk about lodging, and there's no talk about education. And they didn't need those things from the British. But because of the smallpox and the eradication of the buffalo on the plains, thousands and thousands of Indigenous people were starving to death. And of course, it was the British, the Crown, that took advantage of that situation and implemented those three things, which is now the basis of the Indian Act.
So the plan of the industrial school has failed by 1861. In 12 years, it's failed. And so the plan shuts down, but the school, of course, stays there. Physically, it stays there. And then they just go on the provincial plan, whatever it was at the time. And then 1867, Confederation. John A. Macdonald writes the majority of the British North America Act includes Section 9124. And then that gives the Dominion of Canada federal authority to now control our people, as been said, from cradle to grave. And it gives them the legislative authority to then enact the Indian Act.
In 1876, that was a direct assault on the clan system. This is the system that was created for our extermination. This was not a brand new plan in 1876, if my research is right. The Gradual Civilization Act, which later became the Indian Act, began in 1857. So this is a 20-year plan on how to break down this system. In some communities, this was legally enforced. They held elections at gunpoint, and you had to be Christian to participate in those elections. And that's how the chief and council system came to be. That was a direct act of violence on our systems of governing. And then now what's happening today, this is no longer seen as legitimate, and chief and councils are misunderstood as our leadership. No, these are not accidents. This was complete and total political strategy to tear down every single institution of the Indigenous people that existed here.
The reserve system wasn't supposed to last. It was an experiment. It was a school of civilization. We'll get them civilized and turn them into farmers, and then we can get rid of the Indian Reserve, because then we've created the enfranchisement policies, and enfranchisement will now allow us to remove the reserve off the political map.
How we seen the reserve boundary was very simple, was that was a place where the Indigenous people could stay, and that was going to be used for them, and that the settlers were not allowed to live on there. But that didn't mean that we were to be contained on there. It didn't mean that they couldn't live off the reserve. So the treaty was to protect their right to live off the reserve, with special protections for the reserve. But in actuality, the Crown turned it around and used the reserve as a place to colonize, and they started to remove the people off the lands so that there could be a free-for-all in resource extraction.
These were all acts of colonialism. And the only problem now is that this thing this policy coupled with residential school and like social engineering, you know, all of that, the only problem is we're still existing through all these different, whether it was legislated genocide or it was all out physical genocide, you know, or, you know, what do they call residential school? Cultural genocide. We were not supposed to be existing. We were supposed to be gone by now.